An anthology on the bad, the short-lived, and forgotten shows and events in television history. You are listening to It Was a Thing on TV.
Now, Shotty LaRue from my son's favorite show on CBS, which was just picked up again, Frank's Place.
Episode 563. Submission 700. Shangri-La Plaza. Shangri-La Plaza was an unsold pilot that aired on the CBS television network the night of July 30th of 1990. So, guys, we're going to play the intro here in a bit. And let's just say, folks, if you're listening, you're not ready for what you're about to hear. Okay? I'm just warning you in advance.
And then once you go on YouTube to watch this, you won't be ready for the video either.
No. All right. Here's the intro.
When it seems like the sky's falling down
and you can't get your ass,
rations off the ground, don't give up.
you're a lucky.
I know a place where every man has a dream and every car has a space.
Shangri-La,
Hear it call.
Shangri-La,
It's not a mall.
Shangri-La.
We've got frozen yogurt, videos, and chocolatey clips.
All the necessities of life can be gotten there.
Easy in, easy out, rich man or poor.
Everybody's equal at convenience stores. Shangri-La,
Come escape
Shangri-La,
and bring a day.
Shangri-La.
When your love life's up and stalled, drop on by and get your heart overhauled. Xanadu, well, I'm sure it's nice.
But what we're talking about here is freaking paradise.
Shangri-La,
Hear it call.
Shangri-La,
It's not a mall.
Shangri-La. Plaza.
Now, guys, a couple months ago, I brought this pilot to your attention for Pilot Month. And I think I just played you guys the opening of this pilot. And I think both of your reactions were, what the fuck did we just see?
I think it goes a little deeper than just what Greg said. If you look at the video of the open, not just listening to the theme song, which itself is a piece of work, and I don't mean that in a good way. The video, when I first saw it, my first instinct was, hey, this animation looks a lot like Pee-wee's Playhouse. So I'm expecting something very Pee-wee's Playhouse in mind, especially given this is 1990 and Pee-wee Herman did his little thing around this time. It's nothing like Pee-wee's Playhouse. Good heavens, it couldn't be any further away from Pee-wee's Playhouse. We're going to be talking about our grievances with this show quite a bit in this episode, I sort of gather.
Okay, Chico, who do we have in the cast of this pilot?
This pilot, because this is basically the early 90s and the new hotness is a musical series. We have a load of musical talent. For one, this show features the denizens of the titular strip mall. At the top of the billing, we have Terrence Mann, who plays Ira Bondo, one of the Bondo brothers who owns the mechanic shop. He is a Broadway legend, and in 1990, he has already been Javert in Les Mis. He was Rum Tum Tugger in Cats. He also originated the role of the Beast on Broadway's Beauty and the Beast. Playing his brother George is Jeff Yeager, who you would remember as Kyle Bates in the original V.
Was he one of the lizards?
No, he was not one of the lizards.
Okay, good.
And then we have, because they're two brothers, fighting over the same lady, Amy, played by Melora Hardin, best known as Trudy Monk on Monk and Jan Levinson on The Office. And before this pilot, I didn't know she was a singer.
No, I didn't know this either about Melora Hardin.
I also didn't know that she was a brunette.
Yes. By the way, one thing I want to mention about Melora Hardin, she actually, I believe, was originally cast as Jennifer in Back to the Future, but she had to get recast because when they recast the role of Marty McFly from Eric Stoltz to Michael J. Fox, they realized that she was taller than Michael J. Fox. So Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale were like, that is kind of a no-go. So they replaced her with Claudia Wells.
Amy doesn't come to the Plaza by herself. She is a widow, you see. Her late husband owns the Donut Hole, which is run by Geneva, played by Carmen Lundy. I believe this may have been her first role for television. You could tell that she's got musical theater chops.
Oh, yes, definitely.
She was probably one of the high marks in this pilot.
She also has a young daughter named Jenny, played by future Smallville second banana, Allison Mack.
Now, hold on a second. I'm going to make a proposal. I think for the first time ever on this podcast, we have a Mrs. Black on this podcast.
Okay, wait. I proposed that before the show, but I am in total agreement with you.
Make it 3.
Now, hold on a second. I invited David back for the second week in a row to be with us because he wanted to be part of this episode too, considering he's full of musical chops. Now, I got to ask David, do you want to discuss Allison Mack with us in this episode?
Oh, God, no.
Are you sure? You sure you don't want to talk about her?
No.
And then we have, acting as sort of the Greek chorus of the group, a guy by the name of Chili, whose shtick is he's a dancer, but he's also on crutches. So let's get a really good dancer and a really good performer at that. They got one of the best, Savion Glover.
Oh, yes. Actually, the reason why he's on crutches is he actually really got injured before filming this pilot, so they had to work around his injury. Very clever how they did that.
And then we have the owner of the Plaza, Victorio, played by Chris Sarandon,
who would be at this time 3 years removed from Princess Bride.
And he had cards in the original series of Americana back in 2007. I've got a signed card of his somewhere in my collection.
There were 2 other characters cast in the actual TV series. Nas, played by Bernie Colson, and Veronica, played by Hillary Shepard. They didn't appear in the pilot. In fact, the only time you will ever see those 2 is during the opening sequence.
That's like how with the Dick Tracy pilot, we only saw Eve Plum in the opening sequence.
Aside from the people on screen, this was actually the brainchild of 3 people, 2 composers, and a screenwriter who just so happens to have played Michael Myers in the original Halloween.
Oh my God. That's scary. It's about as scary as how the whammy is in front of Mike's screen just staring at us.
The whammy's staring at me. Do I give him money?
No, I don't want any money today.
But you always want money, whammy.
Just not today.
Why? What's today?
I want vehicles today. I want boats. I want cars. Kayaks.
Oh, okay.
Catamarans.
Well, the new season's coming up for you, whammy, so you're going to have to take all those catamarans this season.
Okay, listen here. It's not 1985. They don't offer catamarans. They offer like Vespas and whatever other douchey vehicles people use nowadays.
Bizarro here.
Hey, Bizarro!
I heard you're talking about singing.
So, Bizarro Whammy, have you donated anything to the poor kids in some African country lately?
Me deliver jet skis in Ghana.
What about Boston Celtics 2025 NBA Championship t-shirts?
No.
What about New York Knicks 2025 Championship t-shirts? What about Carolina Hurricanes NHL Championship t-shirts? Oh no, Chico's in the room. Never mind. He didn't flip me off, so I'm okay.
Me going to sing now. Margole.
Bro.
Where's David? Where's David Lee Roth to save us?
I didn't even get to the other two people.
Well, hold on a second. David, what did you think of Bizarro Whammy's singing? Did you like that?
Yeah!
Oh, well, I didn't expect that. David is a fan of Bizarro Whammy's singing.
Oh, yeah!
And I mentioned two composers. The first one was Craig Safin, who scored The Last Starfighter, Stand and Deliver, Major Pain, Cheers, and Remo Williams' The Adventure Begins.
When you said that name, my head thought you were talking about Craig Sager.
No.
Craig Sager is one of life's winners, and we miss him dearly. And the third creator, I guess, is somebody that Gen Xers of a certain age will recognize. Now, he did write Crush by Jennifer Page, Mark Mueller. You know what else he wrote?
What else did he write?
The theme from DuckTales!
Oh, yes. We all love the theme from DuckTales.
Of course you do. Life is like a hurricane here in Duckburg.
The 8-bit rendition of that in the NES game is the best.
Yes, without question.
Also in this pilot, because it is a musical theater sort of vibe, we have to have a really top-notch choreographer, Michael Peters, who went on to choreograph Dreamgirls on Broadway, was the choreographer on this show.
They went all out on the talent. You can't complain about that. Good choreography, good writers in terms of songwriters, musicians, talented cast.
And don't forget Jeremy Railton, who did the set design for Pee-wee's Playhouse. You brought that up.
Is that by coincidence? I'm just wondering. Because we know, well, now, you said it was the set design?
The set design.
Well, I'm talking about the open of the show. Not necessarily the set design in terms of how the different stores in the plaza look versus Pee-wee's Playhouse. I think they're two totally different things. But when you look at Pee-wee's Playhouse in the open of that show versus the plaza in the open of this show, I see a lot of parallels. And I'm not even talking necessarily in terms of just the appearance of the plaza or Pee-wee's Playhouse. It's the whole, like, intro just gives me like a Pee-wee's Playhouse sort of vibe with these different heads popping up. And I mean, there's like no rhyme or reason. It's just every like cast member comes in and says their little line or two in the song, and it's bizarre, but like I said, it just reminds me of Pee-wee's Playhouse in some capacity.
It's fitting we mentioned Pee-wee considering HBO just premiered the Pee-wee as himself documentary.
You said that programming at CBS was unique at that time. There is actually a reason for that because Jeff Sagansky became head of CBS. He was looking for new and unusual shows for the network. And Craig Safin, Mark Mueller, and Nick Castle, bolstered by their love of old time musicals, thought, and this is after they looked at an actual mini mall in Los Angeles and thought, you know what? A musical set in a mini mall.
Yeah, that's the ticket. You know, I should have used that line last week when we were talking about Morgan Fairchild, but missed opportunity.
You didn't have your Tommy Flanagan soundboard loaded.
Is there a Tommy Flanagan soundboard?
Oh, please. I'm sure there's soundboards of anybody you can think of. Yeah, we discovered last week there's a Ronald Reagan soundboard. And SNL was big. Yeah, Tommy Flanagan, that would have been like, what, 86, 87, 88? That's Reagan era. He's got to have a soundboard. Okay, there is no Tommy Flanagan soundboard.
Oh.
Well, what would be on it? Yeah, that's the ticket. My wife, Morgan Fairchild. That would be it. Literally, 2 sounds. David Lee Roth, all he says is, oh yeah, and we've got like 20 different sounds of him.
Let's talk about what happens in this plaza. We start at the Bondo Brothers mechanics. They're fixing up a car. Ira's basically all about the ladies because he took the Cadillac out for a little Cadillac action, let's just say. He's got a song queued up about it called Mercedes and Ladies. George is basically trying to keep him on task. All of a sudden, in comes Amy and Jenny. She sends Jenny to go off and explore the mini mall while she goes into the donut hole looking to sell it. In fact, she's got a song about it, Waiting for a Lawyer. And while she's waiting for the lawyer, it's a song and a routine that will make you think twice about having a donut. Geneva's basically going into great deal about how the donuts at the donut hole is made. Basically with dough that's flung at the wall at oncoming flies and frosting covering short and curlies. Interestingly enough, Jenny is interested. Jenny's very excitable. She's interested in everything. She's interested in the Bondo Brothers mechanics for a while. George and Ira take one look at Amy and are instantly smitten. In fact, they each go in separate directions looking for welcome gifts for Amy. But Amy doesn't plan on staying. She wants to sell the donut hole and buy a trip to Paris to study cooking at Le Cordon Bleu. She has a song about that too. It's called Paris. Turns out George and Ira at the same time meet Amy, and then things get absolutely weird. As Amy tells George and Ira she doesn't plan on staying. However, Geneva hears about this and basically gives up her last damn. You thought she couldn't care less before? She's pretty much checked out. We have all these guys checking out, and they all get to a big group number, which just showcased the talents of everybody in the cast. The name of the big group number at the end is Ain't It Always the Way? It's at this point where Amy learns She cannot sell the donut hole because, frankly, the donut hole is mortgaged up to its powdered sugar. The only thing her husband left her is the donut hole and $900, which Victoria takes because the rent is due.
Oh my God, the rent is due? Crystal, what do you have to say about this?
I want to see rent.
Left with nothing more than a store and a shattered dream, Amy pretty much says, you know what, screw it. I'll run this store. She says it without exactly saying it. When she sees this old man looking for some coffee and just pours him a cup.
Oh, that's nice. Hey, David, what's your reaction to Melora Horton's stay at this strip mall?
Greg, can you give us a warning the next time you play that sound? I think you pierced one of my eardrums.
What do you mean, sound? That's how David was talking.
Mr. Lee Roth, the next time you do that high-pitched squeal, give us a little bit of warning because I don't want like my eardrums being pierced.
Yeah!
I'm glad you agree with me. I'm sorry for accusing you, Greg, of being David Lee Roth. I know David Lee Roth would be upset if I accused him of being you.
Bizarre Whammy would be very upset if you accused him of being Sammy Hagar. No, Bizarre Whammy. Okay. He didn't accuse me of being Sammy Hagar. He accused me of being David Lee Roth. My bad.
The thing is with the Bizarro Whammy there, he is sort of like Sammy Hagar, kind of, sort of. Sammy Hagar, he can't drive 55. Bizarro Whammy, he can't give away less than $55,000.
Let's appreciate that Bizarre Whammy is kind of like the Robin Hood of our day.
And that's pretty much how the pilot goes. I mean, the pilot itself, well, it very much looked the part. And there's actually a good reason for that. It was shot in an actual strip mall.
Oh.
I actually have a story about that. And this is from Saturday, June 2nd of 1990. So this is a clear almost 2 months before the pilot aired. The story is called Gaudy Fake Mini Mall Fools Hollywood Types. It is written by Bob Poole of the Los Angeles Times. Workers did recently what many people only dream of doing to irksome mini malls that seem to pop up on every corner. They took sledgehammers to the neon pink trimmed Shangri-La Plaza in the North Hollywood district of Los Angeles. The mall flower shop advertising free yogurt with every purchase of a dozen roses was demolished. So were the tanning salon, donut stand, video rental store, and the mall's centerpiece storefront, Nam's Nails and Noodles. Even in Los Angeles, where each new L-shaped corner mall tries to outdo the last, it was a standout. Umbrella-topped fast food dining tables lined the mall's second-floor patio. Stylized artificial palm trees stood beneath a jarring Miami Vice modern roof. Two giant frosted donuts revolved atop the donut hole kiosk at the front of the mall's tiny, crowded parking lot. Along with the requisite tax preparer's office and a fast, quote-unquote, 12-minute photo processing store, the mall included Bondo Brothers Auto Body Shop, where walls were decorated with grease-smeared calendar pictures of girls in bikinis. But enough about how I spend my Saturday nights. In short, Shangri-La Plaza seemed to many to be the ultimate mini mall from hell. Tacky, gaudy. It doesn't go with what I call master planning, resident Robert Mines said as he surveyed the mall from across the street. It's, unique, offered Jerry Jones. I'd prefer something more orderly. Jones didn't, but not that Jerry Jones, Greg, not the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, even though he'd be very timely since he bought the Cowboys about this time.
Yeah. Well, it's a shame that it wasn't Jerry Jones. I would have liked to have seen what Jimmy Johnson thought of this strip mall. Maybe there would have been a beauty salon. Like if this show made it to air, to series, and it got big, and then you had the Cowboys win. Maybe they'd have Jimmy Johnson as a guest star. He'd go to like a salon and they'd have like a musical segment about his hair.
There was that Nam's Nails and Noodles I mentioned earlier. I know that's not a hair salon, but working on the nails is sort of kind of related to that. But anyhow, as I was saying, going back to this article, Jones didn't realize that the mini mall was a spoof. Neither did hundreds of others who tried to pull in and shop. The mall was a plywood and chicken wire backdrop for an unusual musical comedy about people who work in a fictitious Los Angeles shopping center. It is one of about 30 new shows being prepared for CBS television. The mock mall was built atop a partially constructed real mini mall. Once the make-believe shops and garish decorations are completely ripped out, the real mall will be finished and its storefronts leased. But compared with Shangri-La Plaza's dancing donuts, artificial trees, and phony second floor, the Dupre Plaza may end up looking a little dull, acknowledged owner Mark Dupre, who was paid $1,000 a day for the use of his mall site. Too bad I can't leave it looking like that, he said. The way they dolled it up is kind of neat. I hate to see them go. Nick Castle, the show's director and executive producer, said that studio designer Jeremy Railton drew from the 500 or so mini malls that have been built in the Los Angeles area in fabricating his mock mall. The result was outrageous, but realistic. We had people come in during the filming and try to rent space from us, said Castle, who hired guards to shoo real-life customers away from the make-believe stores. People have tried to buy flowers and tires. They don't believe you when you say it isn't real and we have to pull it all down when we're through, said Ron Mitchell, the show's coordinating producer. Security officer John Spencer, an off-duty Los Angeles policeman, said one passerby stopped to ask the name of the Shangri-La Plaza architect. The guy liked the look of the plaza and wanted to contact the builder, Spencer said. So this was not a mini mall built just for this purpose. It was a real mini mall with, let's say, Shangri-La Plaza veneers. And it fooled the residents there, for better or for worse.
So we have TV Tango up. So this pilot aired at 8:30 on Monday, July 30th, 1990. So what it went up against was the second half hour of 21 Jump Street on Fox, which did a 4.5. Shangri-La Plaza did a 5.7, by the way. So this was the only thing it beat.
But in Fox's defense, let's remember, this is like the third year of existence. They don't have the coverage that they have nowadays. So 4.5 is actually probably a very good number to Fox.
And I think this was maybe next to last season of 21 Jump Street. I think this was the last season with Johnny Depp in the cast. At 8:30 on NBC, we had the TV adaptation of Working Girl, which did an 8.
Do you know who played the lead in that Working Girl series?
I'm clicking on it right now. I think I know who it is, but I'm going to check right now. I'm clicking on it. Sandra Bullock. Yes, I knew that was her. Who would have thought that Sandy Bullock would be playing the role that Melanie Griffith played? But on ABC, the winner of that night in that time slot was the second half hour of a repeat of MacGyver.
I gotta add, I love what TV Tango did here. They could have just put their Shangri-La Plaza as the title of the show, but no, they call it Busted Pilot. But also, just taking a look at the rest of the night, man, viewers did not care to see this. Greg said that it had a 5.7 rating. Before that was a repeat of Major Dad, and that had a 9.7. But then after it, you had a repeat of Murphy Brown that got an 11.5. So literally, it was more than double what Shangri-La Plaza had. And then after that, it went even higher. You had a repeat of Designing Women, 12.9. And then a Connie Chung news special dropped it a little bit, 10.2. But yikes. It went from 9.7 with Major Dad to 5.7 with this busted pilot, and then back up to 11.5. That's harsh.
I'm looking at that schedule and thinking to myself, give this sort of thing like 10 or so years, people will get it. But in 1990, you had this plus Cop Rock plus Hull High, and they all but guaranteed each other's demise, in my opinion.
Well, I don't think you have to wait 10 years, more like maybe 20 years, because I don't think it was till like Glee when people kind of accepted that sort of show.
But also, Glee didn't have as much entertainment as this. I mean, there actually was like a legitimate plot. You know, there was the happenings of the high school and whatnot. It wasn't just like song and dance, song and dance, song and dance. But also, that actually is one thing I wanted to mention was, for some reason in 1990, there was, I don't want to say an overload of these sort of hybrid shows, the musical comedy, musical drama, but it's like Stephen Bochco, when he created Cop Rock, it was supposed to be revolutionary. We talked about that when we covered Cop Rock a while back. It didn't last 13 episodes. I think it only lasted 11. So yeah, it was different, but was America really clamoring for this sort of hybrid musical comedy, musical drama, musical whatever? I don't see that. Since we're talking about these hybrid musical shows, I want to debut a new game, and it's probably going to be a one-time only game, but you know what? We'll see how this works. Gentlemen, we're going to play the percentages.
That 1980 game show with Jeff Edwards from Barry Enright.
Yes.
Play the percentages
Mike.
to show you how.
So here's what we're going to do, guys. I want you guys to privately message me. Don't message me through group chat. I have a question here, and I want you to give me the number that's closest to the actual answer. Earlier today, in preparation for this episode, I actually compiled how long in this pilot there was singing or music versus actual dialogue. And what I want you to tell me is what percent of the show was singing or music. Whole numbers only. And actually, the answer to this question will be a whole number. I rounded up. So tell me what percent of this pilot was singing or dancing versus talking, dialogue. Greg, what is your answer?
65%.
And Chico, what is your answer?
69%.
I have the numbers here, and I actually did chart this out at work when students were not in my classroom, just to legitimize it. The amount of singing or music or non-musical sounding dialogue was 1,012 seconds. The amount of actual non-music, non-singing, talking dialogue in this pilot is 270 seconds. So that's 4.5 minutes, and the singing, that would be just about 17 minutes. The actual percent pre-rounding is 78.94%. So round up, 79% of this show was singing or music. So Chico wins. Play the percentages. And actually, going in, I just came up with this on the fly this morning. I legit thought that 90% of this show was singing or music. So the 79% was actually kind of on the low end, in my opinion. And I wish I saved the numbers, because I actually did a Excel spreadsheet with singing or music on one column and dialogue in the other column. And I was tracking, the length of time for each of them. And there was at one point, it wasn't like 5 minutes of constant singing, but it was darn close. It was like just under 4 minutes. And then there were other times where it was like 3 minutes of singing. And then you had little bits of dialogue for literally like 8 seconds. There's a lot of singing going on here.
Well, if they spent as much time singing as they did on plot development, maybe they could have had something.
I still think it's too corny to have become an actual series. I'm sorry, again, when you look at the open and you've got these heads popping up seemingly at random, singing a different line from the opening theme, and you've got donuts dancing down the conveyor belt on the countertop or whatever, it looks like something from Pee-wee's Playhouse. And it's as far away from Pee-wee's Playhouse as you could possibly get.
I totally get that. I mean, the opening itself is wacky, but the actual show itself is kitschy.
Now, I don't think it's kitschy in a good way.
It looks like a 90s fever dream. Got the pastels, the video store, all of the crazy shapes to everything.
Well, again, now it sounds like Pee-wee's Playhouse again. The goofy shapes and goofy animations, and maybe the people being more of a caricature than an actual person. I'm not buying it. I did see it a few times, and I do not share Chico's opinion. This wasn't like first time, oh my gosh, this is bizarre. Second time, dang, this should have made it to TV. No, this was first time, bizarre as all get out. Second time, even more bizarre. Once I actually, again, looked at how much singing there is versus actual dialogue, and again, I think Chico mentioned the plot development. There's very little plot development here. I mean, this isn't even like an expository episode. It's like a basic introduction to the Plaza without getting too deep into everything. Not a fan.
Well, you know who was a fan? The cast behind Shangri-La Plaza. I have this article here from Los Angeles Magazine, and I'm quoting Melora Hardin now. I did Chicago on Broadway in 2009 with Charlotte Demboise, who's Terrence Mann's wife, and I was like, oh my god, I just adore your husband. I had such fun doing Shangri-La Plaza with him. On the other hand, you have Terrence Mann, who hasn't seen the pilot himself, but every so often it comes up, and he's like, someone might say at a party, hey, let's watch Terry's Shangri-La Plaza, and I go, oh, fuck, here we go.
Hey, he had the same reaction Mike did.
Mike, you may not have liked it, but I still think that shows like this show crawled so that the Crazy Ex-Girlfriends of the world and the Glees of the world and the musical episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayers of the world could run.
I didn't even think of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. Yeah.
I disagree because you could use that same logic and say Cop Rock did the same thing. It was a dramatic TV show with singing, and Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, not exactly a comedy. So maybe the parallel lies there.
The pilot is available on YouTube. You can watch it for yourself and make your own judgment call.
This pilot didn't have a song as memorable as He's Guilty, Judge He's Guilty from Cop Rock. Wouldn't you agree, Mike? That was memorable, right? He's guilty, Judge He's guilty.
I'm not joking when I say this. Yesterday on my memories on Facebook, that came up because a year ago, a certain somebody had 34 guilty responses. I don't know who. I clearly know who, but I'm not saying his name. Well, we talked about Mrs. Black. Let's just say that this is a Mr. Black.
Shangri-La Plaza. In 2025, it became the stuff of flu-induced nightmares and a bit of a cult classic amongst people who remember that era fondly. But in 1990, it was a busted thing on TV.
You can find us at our website, itwasthethingontv.com, on Facebook at It Was a Thing on TV podcast, and elsewhere at It Was a Thing on TV. You can find us on any podcast player, and we're also on YouTube, where you can subscribe to our channel to keep up to date with our releases, including what's coming up next time.
We're going to be celebrating the anniversary of a birthday for one of our Hall of Famers on this podcast. And to celebrate this man's birthday, we're going to cover a show that he did in the early 1970s. Now, we did cover one show he did before on this podcast, but we're going to be covering the other show he did in the early 70s. And let me just say this. I think a certain thing will be rising in this episode.
It can't be taken out of context at all.
No, but you'll find out more about that in the next episode if it was a thing on TV. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you with that episode next time. For myself, for Chico, and for Mike, I'm Greg. Please be kind to each other, and we will see you for that episode next week. Wow! Shake it up! It's not a moon. Shake it up! It's not a moon.